The morning fog parts just enough for Lucas Ryder to see the first dark shapes rising from the sea, and for a split second he thinks his eyes are lying. But the line keeps growing until it swallows the horizon. 7,000 ships. The number crashes into him harder than the distant explosions rolling across the waves. He feels his pulse hammer as one thought slices through everything. What if their fight ended before the first shot was fired? Emil calls out behind him, asking what he sees. But the truth sticks in Lucas's throat, because saying it aloud might break the last fragile shield holding his men together. The bunker trembles again as more flashes spark along the water, and he suddenly wonders if justice now means speaking the truth no one wants to face. He grips the concrete edge, breath tight, trying to choose between silence that kills or honesty that changes everything. And as the ships keep coming, endless and unstoppable, he knows that whatever he decides inside this moment will mark him forever. Lucas steps back from the bunker opening, still trying to understand the scale of what he just saw as Emil demands an answer that Lucas can barely form. The words feel heavy, but he forces them out, admitting that the sea is filled with ships beyond anything they can hope to stop. The room falls into uneasy silence as Otto looks between them with growing panic, and the bunker shudders again under the distant barrage. Lucas feels the weight of leadership settling on him like iron, knowing every choice he makes now decides whether his men survive the next hour. Otto begs them to fall back, but Emil snaps that retreat will only get them court-martialed, and the tension between them sparks like flint against steel. Lucas watches them argue as landing craft break through the fog outside, their engines humming like an approaching storm. His heart tightens as he realizes fear is about to take control, unless he finds a way to steady them. He steps forward, raising his voice just enough to cut through their panic, and tells them that survival depends on calm, not chaos, even as he feels the world closing in around them. Lucas orders the men to ready positions, but warns them not to fire too early, hoping the delay will give nearby villagers a chance to escape. Emil hesitates, confused by the unexpected mercy, but Lucas meets his eyes with a steady firmness that leaves no room for argument. The coastline rumbles as the bombardment grows heavier, and Lucas steps toward the bunker exit with a sense of purpose he hasn't felt in years, knowing that protecting lives now matters more than defending orders carved from pride. Outside in the trenches, Lucas sees villagers running for cover as the first Allied waves inch closer, and something inside him cracks open with sudden clarity. Emil shouts for him to return to safety, but Lucas simply says that the only thing that matters now is saving whoever they can before the storm reaches them. Shells scream overhead, shaking the ground, yet Lucas feels strangely steady as he moves forward, guided by a new sense of justice that cuts through fear like a clear path through smoke. Lucas moves deeper into the trenches as the morning sky shakes with incoming fire, each blast throwing dirt into the air like the earth itself is trying to warn him. Emil catches up, breathing hard, demanding to know why Lucas is risking everything for people who are not part of their orders. But Lucas answers with a calmness that surprises them both, saying that saving lives is the only choice that still makes sense. Otto stumbles behind them, terrified by the growing thunder of approaching landing craft, and for a moment, Lucas wonders how any of them can stand against what is coming. The distant shapes of Allied soldiers begin to form through the mist, sharp and steady, and Lucas feels the danger closing in as fast as the tide. He signals the men to hold fire, even though every instinct screams that the moment could kill them, choosing instead the slim hope that mercy will matter more than fear in the hours ahead. Emil's voice cracks as he asks Lucas if he truly believes mercy will change anything when the enemy is this close. But Lucas keeps his focus on the advancing silhouettes, refusing to let panic rule his choices. The air shakes again as naval shells land farther down the beach, sending tremors through the trenches. Lucas orders Otto to guide any nearby civilians toward safer ground, knowing the young soldier is terrified, but also knowing he needs a purpose to keep his fear from breaking him. Emil watches in disbelief as Otto runs off, and Lucas senses the conflict building inside his second-in-command, a growing tension between loyalty and conscience that mirrors his own. The first wave of soldiers is nearly within sight, and Lucas steadies himself, choosing to hold the line without firing, hoping the world will allow this small act of restraint to matter. Otto rushes toward the village ruins, shouting for civilians to move quickly as debris falls from the cracked walls around them. Margot appears through drifting dust, holding the hands of two children, her face set with fierce resolve as she thanks Otto for coming. He stumbles through his words, overwhelmed by fear and responsibility, but Margot steadies him with a quiet certainty that gives him strength. Together they lead the children towards safer ground, while the thunder of the fleet grows louder, the world tightening with every step. Otto glances back toward the trenches, hoping Lucas's choice will not get them all caught in the deadly space between two armies. Back at the trench, the first Allied soldiers hit the shore, moving with steady precision despite the chaos around them. Lucas watches them approach, feeling the pressure build like a storm inside his chest, but he keeps his hand raised, signaling his men to stay calm. Emil grips his rifle so tightly, his knuckles pale, torn between fear and trust as he glances at Lucas, searching for assurance that this decision won't cost them everything. Lucas holds firm, believing that firing now will only bring pointless death. As the Allied troops spread across the sand, he breathes deeply, preparing for the moment when their paths collide, and someone must choose how this meeting will end. The first Allied soldiers push closer, and Lucas steps up from the trench with open hands, a move that makes Emil shout his name in fear. But Lucas stands tall, trusting that humanity still has a place on a battlefield drowning in fire and rage. The soldiers hesitate, unsure of his intentions, and in that fragile pause, Lucas calls out for them to stop shooting so civilians can escape the area. For a moment, the entire beach seems to hold its breath. Then an Allied voice answers, strong and direct, promising that no civilians will be harmed if no German fire is returned. Lucas feels a wave, but also a deeper weight, knowing the next choice will decide whether this fragile moment becomes a spark of peace or collapses back into violence. A tense silence hangs between the two sides as Lucas slowly lowers his hands, watching the Allied soldiers approach with cautious steps. Emil moves beside him, whispering that this is madness, but Lucas stands firm, sensing that this fragile stillness is the only thing keeping them alive. One of the Allied soldiers calls out for them to step forward slowly, and Lucas complies, feeling the eyes of dozens of rifles locked on him. The air smells of smoke and salt as the waves crash behind them, carrying broken pieces of metal onto the shore. Emil hesitates, then follows, unsure whether he is walking towards safety or surrender. Lucas feels the weight of the moment pressing hard on his shoulders, knowing one wrong move could turn this beach into a graveyard. As Lucas and Emil draw nearer, an American officer emerges from the fog, his voice steady and clear as he orders his men to hold fire. Lucas recognizes the authority in his tone and senses this man might be the key to keeping everyone alive. Emil breathes heavily beside him, whispering doubts, but Lucas silences him with a firm look. The officer steps closer, demanding to know why two German soldiers walked into an active landing zone without weapons raised. Lucas answers simply, civilians need time to escape, and firing now would only bring loss that helps no one. The officer studies his face for a long moment, trying to judge whether this is truth or trick, and the entire beach waits on his decision. Miles away in the damaged village, Otto guides Margot and the children through the falling dust as more shells land dangerously close. He urges them to move faster, fear rising in him like a tide. But Margot stays calm, steadying the children and keeping Otto focused. She asks whether Lucas is safe, and Otto hesitates, admitting he does not know anymore. The distant thundering of war grows louder, making the ground tremble beneath their feet as they weave through broken stone and splintered wood. For the first time, Otto realizes that saving these lives might mean defying everything he has been taught, and the thought both terrifies and strengthens him as they push forward through the ruins. Back on the beach, Captain Ward questions Lucas with sharp precision, asking why a German officer would risk his life to protect civilians during an invasion. Lucas feels the weight of every word he chooses as he explains that the war is already lost, and the only justice left is to save those who cannot save themselves. Emil listens with mixed awe and fear, realizing this honesty might cost them everything. Ward studies Lucas silently, gauging his sincerity, while the crash of waves and distant gunfire underline the urgency between them. Finally, Ward signals his men to stand down slightly, not fully, but enough to show he is willing to listen. And Lucas feels the first fragile shift toward understanding. Ward steps closer, lowering his voice as he asks Lucas what he wants from this moment, and Lucas answers simply, time. Time for civilians to escape. Time to keep his men from firing. Time to choose a path that does not end in pointless death. Ward takes in the plea, then slowly nods, agreeing to allow a brief window before the next push forward. Emil exhales shakily, stunned that an enemy officer would grant them even a moment of mercy. Lucas thanks Ward, feeling a rare spark of hope, even as the roar of approaching reinforcements reminds him that this fragile peace cannot last. As Ward turns back to his men, Lucas knows the hardest decisions still lie ahead. Lucas leads Emil back toward the trenches, both men shaken by the fragile agreement that now hangs between them and the advancing Allied forces. Emil keeps glancing back at the beach, as if expecting gunfire to erupt at any second. But Lucas stays focused on the ruined village ahead, knowing civilians must be moved before the next push begins. The sky darkens with drifting smoke as the distant echo of artillery rolls across the coast, like a warning that time is running thin. Lucas pushes forward, telling Emil that justice in war is not a grand idea, but the single choice someone makes when nobody else will. Emil nods slowly, understanding more with each step, though fear still clings to him. Together they move toward the shattered homes, ready to face whatever waits inside the crumbling streets. Otto spots Lucas and Emil emerging from the fog and runs to them, breathless and shaken as he reports that Margot and the children are safe, but many others are still hiding inside collapsing homes. Lucas places a steady hand on Otto's shoulder, calming the panic in his voice as he directs him to guide Margot to the safest route out of the village. Emil watches the young soldier tremble, seeing how close fear is to breaking him, yet also how hard Otto is trying to do what is right. Explosions thunder in the distance, shaking dust from the roofs above them as Lucas urges both men forward. He knows the next minutes will decide whether the villagers escape or get trapped in the coming assault. Margot appears through a cloud of dust, guiding two more frightened villagers as the ground trembles beneath their feet. She meets Lucas with a look of relief, mixed with urgency, explaining that several families are trapped in a collapsed cellar on the far side of the square. Lucas immediately signals Emil and Otto to join him, moving at once through the rubble, while Margot continues leading the rest towards safety. The streets feel like they are closing in as distant gunfire grows louder, echoing down the narrow corridors. Lucas pushes forward, driven by a rising fear that they may reach the cellar too late, and every step through broken stone adds weight to the race against time. The collapsed cellar doorway is blocked by heavy beams and shattered bricks, and Lucas immediately kneels to dig as he hears muffled voices calling from beneath the debris. Emil and Otto join him, pulling away stones with frantic urgency, while the sound of approaching engines grows louder beyond the village. Margot arrives with two more villagers to help, and together they create a narrow opening, just wide enough for Lucas to reach inside. He speaks calmly to those trapped within, promising they will be pulled out before the fighting reaches them. Sweat, dust, and fear mix in the air as they work against the ticking clock of war closing in around them. One by one, they pull the trapped villagers from the wreckage, and Lucas lifts the final child from the opening, just as the distant sound of tanks echoes through the village streets. Emil urges everyone to move, panic edging into his voice, but Lucas stays calm, directing them toward the evacuation path. Margot, mapped earlier. The rescued families cling to them as they run through the ruins, dust swirling beneath their feet as the ground vibrates from the incoming advance. Lucas feels the strain of every choice he has made, yet also a deep certainty that this is the justice he chose to stand for. As they near the outskirts of the village, he hears distant allied voices shouting commands, signaling that their fragile time is almost gone. Lucas leads the group toward the outskirts of the village, the air thick with smoke as distant gunfire echoes through the ruined streets. Emil keeps glancing back, worried the Allied advance will reach them before they clear the rubble-choked path. Otto stays close to the children, guiding them with shaking hands but determined steps, while Margot keeps the villagers moving with calm, steady words. Lucas senses the pressure tightening like a vice. Every second lost brings danger closer. He pushes forward, telling everyone to stay low and keep moving, believing that if they can reach the old stone ridge, they will be safe from the fighting. Behind them, the roar of engines grows stronger, a harsh reminder that time is slipping away. They reach a broken courtyard where scattered stones and shattered beams force them to slow down, and Lucas quickly evaluates the safest path through the debris. Emil warns that the courtyard is too exposed, but Lucas insists they must cross before the fighting reaches this part of the village. Margot takes the hands of two elderly villagers, helping them step over fallen wood, while Otto supports a man who can barely walk. For a brief moment, Lucas looks at the group and feels a surge of pride at their courage in a place filled with fear. He signals them forward, determined to bring them through before the sky erupts again. Halfway across the courtyard, a sudden blast shakes the ground, sending dust into the air and knocking Otto off his feet. Lucas pulls him up quickly, telling him to breathe and keep moving as the villagers panic around them. Margot calms the children, shielding them with her arms, while Emil calls out directions to avoid the collapsing edges of the ruined walls. The noise grows louder, closer, sharper, each sound another reminder that they are running out of time. Lucas pushes the group forward, refusing to let fear break their momentum, determined not to fail the people who trusted him. They reach the far side of the courtyard, just as the sound of nearby boots echoes through the smoke. Lucas freezes, listening carefully, realizing these are not Allied steps. German reserves have arrived, unaware of the fragile peace on the beach. Emil tenses, knowing these soldiers will fire on anything that moves without question. Lucas signals the group to stay hidden as he steps forward, preparing to confront his own troops before they stumble onto the civilians and open fire. The decision feels like stepping off a cliff, but he knows he cannot turn back. Justice demands he face his own side now, even if it puts him directly in harm's way. 3 German soldiers appear through the haze, rifles raised as they demand Lucas identify himself. He stands tall, speaking calmly as he orders them to lower their weapons, insisting there are civilians behind him who must not be harmed. The soldiers hesitate, confused by his tone and the chaos around them. Emil steps forward beside Lucas, adding his voice to the command, while Otto watches with wide eyes, waiting to see whether their own army will turn on them. After a tense pause, the soldiers slowly begin to lower their rifles. Uncertain but willing to listen, Lucas breathes out quietly, knowing this moment, this tiny victory, keeps their fragile hope alive as the war closes in around them. Lucas steps closer to the 3 German soldiers, speaking calmly as he directs them to fall back and avoid the civilians hiding in the ruins. The soldiers exchange uneasy glances, unsure whether to obey him or challenge him. But Lucas keeps his voice steady, telling them that the battle has already moved beyond these streets, and firing now will only spill innocent blood. Emil supports him with a firm nod, while Otto waits anxiously, clutching his rifle but praying he won't have to use it. The soldiers slowly back away, confusion softening their hostility, and Lucas feels a small wave of relief wash over him. He knows, though, that this calm will not hold for long. The real storm is still coming, carried on the rumble of tanks approaching from the far end of the village. As the soldiers retreat, Lucas signals the villagers to move again, guiding them toward the old stone ridge where they might be safe from both armies. Margot gathers the children, keeping them close as she follows Lucas through the narrow pass. Emil scouts ahead, checking each corner before waving the group forward, while Otto keeps to the side, helping anyone who stumbles. The echoes of distant fighting mix with the crackle of burning homes, filling the air with a restless tension. Lucas feels the pressure building with each step. They have gained precious time, but the war is closing around them like a tightening fist. He urges everyone onward, knowing the next minutes will decide whether they find shelter or fall into chaos once more. They reach the ridge, but as Lucas scans the horizon, he spots another wave of German troops sweeping toward the village from the north. Emil curses under his breath, realizing these soldiers will not hesitate like the others. They will treat anyone in their path as an enemy. Lucas quickly directs Margot to take the civilians behind the ridge, while he, Emil, and Otto try to delay the incoming troops. Otto's face pales at the thought, but he nods, accepting the weight of what Lucas is asking. Margot looks back, fear tugging at her expression, but she trusts Lucas enough not to argue. As the villagers disappear behind the rocks, Lucas steels himself for what might be the hardest confrontation yet. Lucas steps forward, waving his arms to signal the approaching German troops to stop, shouting that civilians are ahead and firing will kill their own people. The commander of the unit shouts back angrily, accusing Lucas of betrayal and demanding his surrender. Emil raises his rifle, but keeps it pointed at the ground, torn between loyalty to Lucas and fear of his own countrymen. Otto trembles, gripping his weapon tightly, ready to act if the situation collapses. Lucas stands firm, refusing to move aside, his voice unwavering even as the commander threatens to open fire. The village around them feels like it is holding its breath as both sides wait for the final choice to be made. The German commander raises his pistol, aiming it directly at Lucas, furious at what he sees as betrayal. Emil shouts for him to stop, stepping between Lucas and the gun, but the commander orders him aside with a sharp yell. Otto's breathing quickens as he aims his own rifle at the commander, hands shaking but eyes fierce, knowing this moment could end all of them. Lucas lifts his hands slowly, telling everyone to stay calm, but the commander only grows more enraged. For a heartbeat, the world hangs on the edge of disaster. Then the sound of Allied artillery crashes nearby, forcing the commander's unit to scatter for cover. Lucas seizes the moment, pulling Emil and Otto back toward the ridge, knowing they have escaped only by a sliver. The fragile path to justice is narrowing, but he is not ready to give up. Lucas, Emil, and Otto race back toward the ridge as the ground trembles from the artillery strike, dust falling in heavy clouds around them. When they reach the shelter, Margot is waiting with the villagers, her face tight with worry until she sees they are alive. Lucas gathers everyone close, telling them they must move deeper into the hills before the next wave of fighting arrives. Emil breathes hard, shaken by how close they came to disaster, while Otto wipes dust from his face, trying to steady his nerves. The villagers cling to each other, frightened but determined to follow. Lucas feels the weight of every life around him, knowing this final stretch will decide whether their struggle ends in safety or loss. They begin climbing the rocky slope, moving carefully to avoid loose stones as the distant roar of tanks rolls up the valley. Margot keeps the children close, while Emil helps an older villager navigate the uneven path. Otto walks at the rear, checking constantly for danger behind them. Lucas leads from the front, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of Allied or German troops. The clouds break just enough to let in a faint beam of golden light, a small reminder that the world beyond this moment still exists. Lucas urges them forward, knowing they only need to reach the tree line ahead to be hidden from both armies. As they near the tree line, Lucas hears the sharp call of Allied soldiers approaching from the southern ridge. Emil looks to him in alarm, fearing they'll be mistaken for a retreating German unit. Lucas raises his hands high, signaling the group to stop while he steps forward alone. Margot holds the children close, whispering to keep them calm. And Otto stands frozen, unsure of what will happen. From the trees, several allied soldiers emerge, rifles ready, demanding Lucas identify himself. He answers calmly, explaining that civilians are behind him, and they need safe passage. The soldiers hesitate, wary but attentive, as Lucas waits for their decision with steady resolve. Captain Henry Ward emerges from behind the Allied line, his expression tightening when he recognizes Lucas standing unarmed in front of his soldiers. He steps forward, asking whether Lucas managed to evacuate the civilians in time. Lucas nods and gestures to the villagers, explaining they only need to pass through the tree line to reach safety. Ward studies the group, then looks back at Lucas with quiet respect, acknowledging the risk he took. Emil and Otto watch silently, unsure whether Ward will honor the fragile trust they established earlier. After a long pause, Ward orders his men to lower their weapons and allow the group through, giving Lucas a small nod that carries more weight than any spoken thanks. The villagers pass safely into the shelter of the forest. As Lucas walks beside Ward, the two men exchanging a final quiet understanding in the fading light. Emil and Otto follow close behind, each carrying the weight of everything they have seen and done. Margot leads the children deeper into the trees, relief softening her expression for the first time that day. Lucas pauses at the ridge, looking back at the broken village, the wrecked beach, and the horizon still filled with smoke. He knows the war will continue. But here, just for these lives, justice found a way through. Then he turns toward the forest, ready to follow the others into a future none of them could have imagined that morning.